What's your name and what do you do?
I'm Channing McCorson and I'm the container guy. I do shipping container mods. That's a lot of what our company does nowadays, or where I spend my time on. And that's beyond just the modifications. We actually build container-based structure parts that helps the everyday DIYer take on projects like this and be successful in them.
How long have you been working with shipping containers?
I've been doing this since university actually, or before, while my parents were the container guy. And then leaving university, I actually went on Dragon's Den, which is the Canadian equivalent to the Shark Tank in the United States there. And that we got to deal with one of the dragons. And I sold out of that shortly after, and I've been doing the modifications for the container guy ever since, as well as all the other aspects of running the business. I am a CPA by trade. A lot of people think I'm an engineer, but I am not. I'm more business minded, but I really enjoy this stuff. I have a passion for it. And we've developed our own method of modifying containers, something that works in the northern climate. A lot of the ways that people do it in the United States just does not work here with our extreme cold. And so I had to come up with methods without having a big, beautiful heated shop. How am I going to perform these types of modifications outside when you can't even paint really 7 months of the year?
How long does a container last?
Containers last a long time. When we started selling containers 15 years ago, there's some containers that we're still utilizing to store my grandma's contents after we moved her out of the house, and that thing looks identical. We've also, the very first double wide container that I did, it was a container cabin that was supposed to be for my family. We ended up using it as an office at our business, but that thing looks like the day that we worked on that. But a lot of that was to do with me being very fussy on how I took care of all of the steel on the outside of that thing. I prepped that paint immaculately. So it's all about, just like the body work that you do on your vehicle, the prep work. And so if you do a very good job prepping and painting and making sure that no bare metal is exposed on these things, they can last a long time. So knowing that those are 15 years old now and they're still looking great, as long as you spray foam and you don't get mold within your porous members, they're gonna last a long time. I hardly wanna give a number to it, but it's gotta be 50 to 100 years if you take care of that steel and make sure that you don't get any of that cancerous rust.
Do you recommend buying a new or a used shipping container?
I've always recommended, if you're gonna be spending money on a container mod, to use new shipping containers, or what's very commonly known in the industry is one-time use. So basically, these things are built in China, they're filled up full of cargo, and then they're shipped here and put for sale right away to the North American market. So people like you and me that are looking for a container for storage, or now that it's becoming more popular, manufacturing of a container-based structure. But I have been noticing that there are a lot of factories in China now, a lot of smaller pop-up shop factories that are really building low quality containers. So if you're gonna be utilizing a one-time use shipping container, you really actually gotta make sure that you get one from a reputable factory, and you not being in the industry, you're not gonna know that. And so you're really gonna have to lean on a reseller that's local that you can trust. There might be amazing deals at the port where you can spend only $800 and get this container, but you might be better off spending $2,000 at a reputable human where you can go look at the containers, pick out the exact one, make sure that it has a good paint job on it and is built with Core 10 steel. That's also very important. Some people will cheap out and they'll use mild steel, and then water gets behind the paint, between the paint and the steel, and that rusts right away. And that's what's gonna degrade your container-based structure in no time.
What's the number one mistake people make when buying a shipping container?
The number one mistake that people could make when buying a container is getting scammed. Scams are huge around the industry right now. The container industry is ripe for them because it's weird and it's hard to actually line up a shipping container. There's a lot of resellers that aren't local to your area, and so they'll be advertising on Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji or Craigslist, and you just kind of have to have a leap of faith. You send your money and hopefully a container arrives, but you don't have to do that. If you go to a reputable dealer that has a location on the ground, they're not going to be the cheapest person around because they actually have employees, they actually own land, they actually own forklifts, they have expenses. And those people that are investing in a business, they deserve to charge more for a shipping container. They're providing more value to you, and the value that you can get is you can get in your vehicle, you can go there, you can look, and you can pick out your exact container, and then you're not going to get scammed. So the number one thing that you could do wrong is have to pay twice for a shipping container, once to the scammer and once to the legit company.
In your opinion, what's the best part about working with shipping containers?
The best part about working with containers in making container-based structures is that you start with something. If you're just doing traditional construction, you basically roll into an empty lot, into a field. You have to strip away all the topsoil and start with your concrete foundation. It could be months before you actually have something to shelter your head. So if you're actually building something out of a container, the moment that that truck drops it off, you can start stuffing your tools, your construction materials inside of this structure. So much of this is done for you already in China. And the cost to do this, to build a welded structure like this in North America, would be so much more money than what you can actually buy a container for. So there's an extreme amount of value inside of these steel seam welded rectangular boxes.
When is it better to stick with traditional methods of construction?
It's better to stick with traditional methods of construction if permitting is involved. If you know that this is going in the middle of a city and you know that that municipality is anti-shipping container, those people that work for the government or the local government are going to be in your way and breathing down your neck every step of the way. So sometimes by the time you're done, all of your engineering requirements, your architectural requirements, and battling the municipality, you're way better off just to use regular construction methods and just stick frame or just follow the construction methods that are within your local or national building codes.
What are 3 builds where containers really make sense to use?
3 builds that really make sense. There's a lot of repeat modifications that we see over and over with shipping containers. One of them would be hazardous materials storage. Rather than storing a bunch of flammables or toxic chemicals inside of your building that probably has offices, let's get that dangerous set of goods 30 feet away from another building. If you can have a container that's far enough away where the fire risk or the health risk is decoupled from your actual structure, and then utilize the shipping containers for what they're good at, storing goods. The one thing with the hazardous material storage is you'll want to make sure that you have secondary containment. So if anything inside of there actually leaks, you got a containment pan inside of that unit, and that's going to catch anything or 110% of the material that's actually stored inside of there. One other thing with hazardous material is making sure that it's well ventilated, and often passively ventilated. You don't want mechanical ventilation because that requires electricity, and electricity sparks, and often hazardous material is flammable. So just a lot of vents allowing any vapors that are either heavier or lighter than air to get in and get out, or you do not want those in those containers, because if there ever is a fire, it's happened lots where firefighters have died because the doors have blown right off. A single bottle of propane inside of a container that's cracked open or leaked can create a massive explosion, and these doors are heavy, they're a lethal weapon. Another use that we often see with containers is electrical shacks. So MCC shacks, they work great as a temporary e-house, or you can actually put a lot of sensitive equipment in there. But if you're gonna have a lot of instrumentation inside of a container, you wanna make sure that it's insulated well and it's insulated with spray foam. You don't wanna just take a raw shipping container, a dry shipping container they call them, where it's non-insulated and not vented, because all those electrical components, they produce heat, and then that's gonna create condensation, and then that's gonna drip, and then you got water dripping on your electrical. And then another great use for shipping containers, it might not be so much as what they're used for, but who should be using them. So a lot of people who are willing to live inside of a shipping container or don't have the means to live in a regular home can't afford to buy a home. And therefore, unfortunately, it's people with disposable income that have access to container-based structures and get to utilize these things for what they're worth, but not have to live in it full time. And so a situation like a bunkhouse as an accessory building to a cabin that you already have, or a guest house at your home, or a yoga studio in the backyard, something that you can do yourself and is very achievable, even if you don't have a ton of disposable income, but you have some construction knowledge and you're able to do a lot of the work yourself. You can actually start off with a structure, install a few components like doors and windows, get that thing insulated and lined, and have yourself some additional square feet for your day-to-day life. And they second as a nice little storm shelter in the instance of a tornado or something.
in your eyes, what sets the container guy and container modification world apart from other companies in the industry?
The container guy utilizing container modification world system is vastly different than the way that the majority of the industry modifies containers, because everyone typically gets out the torch or the angle grinder, they whack holes in the side of a container, and they immediately go to structural steel, whether it's HSS, rec tube, or angle iron, and they just start welding and burning the paint. And I hate burning the paint because a year or 2 or 3 later, as I go to some of the modifications that I've performed myself, I can just see where I've touched up the container and it's all brown, even though I've painted it a different color. And then the rest of the container looks great from factory where we did not disturb the paint. So this bolt-on DIY method that works great in Canada and allows us to work outside and perform awesome modifications like this in -40, that seems to be also the best way for the DIYer to do it. And so we're really trying to build container-based structures like you would build an ambulance or an airplane. You want all these components pre-manufactured in a controlled environment, pre-engineered, knowing that they're gonna fit perfectly when they arrive on a pallet. And then you just start cutting your holes. You got your plans all 3D modeled and everything just fits together perfectly. And that's the ecosystem that we're striving for here, is we're really trying to just have every small detail and every little corner pre-planned out so that we know when we get at this thing, as long as we have our bill of materials, we got all of our components laying there in front of us, we're gonna be successful performing the mod. Wow, you guys asked me a lot of questions. The video team behind the cameras, they surprised me. They sat me down on this log here and just shot a bunch of questions at me, and I did not have time to rehearse these, so they might not have been answered perfectly, or if I had more time to formulate my answers, they might have been slightly different. So if I did misspeak or you don't agree with me, please leave comments down below or just spark the conversation. And if you enjoyed them stealing me and sitting me down here and you want me to do this again, let me know down in the comments below so we can maybe do this more often. You'll also notice that we're sitting inside a pretty cool container, and it seems a little bit wider than one. It's actually 2. This is a double wide 20-foot here, and we're gonna be utilizing this ourselves here in our shop and get some feedback on how this performs in our Canadian climate. So you're gonna wanna make sure you subscribe to our channel, be notified when this video comes out, because this 20-foot double wide kit is what the video team behind the camera, they think that everyone's gonna want this kit. It was very low cost and it was very easy to install. So if you found value from this video, do us a favor and give it a like. That really helps the algorithm push these types of videos and allows us to keep feeding you container related content. I guess until then, hope you learned something. I'm out of here. Yeah.